words as like a way like of interacting with the world, and which includes the world interacting back at you.
Yeah. Logos.
Logos.
So it's like a relatively new term in my vocabulary. I guess you have been one source of it, and then the other source was Catherine McGee and Robert Baez.
Oh yeah,
talks.
We listened to that talk.
That I've been listening to, and in fact, on my way here, I was listening to another talk, and maybe one kind of story I want to bring from that I think summarizes why I want to get closer to Logos, is that Catherine said something like, Logos is a way to bring the like world of concepts and ideas and frameworks with like sacredness. And I think I've been
yeah, that makes sense.
I think I've been looking to bridge between my intellectual mind and my spiritual is that spiritual? I don't know. Left brain and right brain. Maybe that's better to say. Although now I'm remembering that book, Master and the Emissary, and I think he maybe said you shouldn't say right brain and left brain. It's like right hemisphere and left hemisphere.
Yeah.
So I want to bridge those, and and it feels like Logos sort of sits interestingly in between, perhaps, or that's the indication that I'm getting. There's something.
Yeah, interesting.
There's something there.
I like that.
So that's one story. There's another story. Oh yeah. So especially this week, I feel like I've been getting this sense in myself that I should sort of get rid of some of the stories that I'm in, or that the stories that I'm setting myself in, or that I'm telling about my life, are constraining, are making it harder for me to grow. And I guess that's another piece of it. There's this interest in setting better frames or stories for my life. Yeah. So I think those are the two entry points for me. And I wonder, maybe I'll stop here, and I'm curious what that brings up.
Yeah. I mean, so it brings up for me, like, well, John, why are you interested in it? And I think part of the answer is, I don't know. It's a concept that I first got from Anna Salomon. That I first got from Anna Salomon, and like at first it didn't resonate, and then it started resonating like quite hard. And it feels like it speaks to this sense that I have had that there's like an art, that there's like this thing that we can pay attention to, that makes like talking good. Like, I think there's a big difference between conversations that work and conversations that don't work. And it often feels like if we're like keeping track of sort of what are the things in the middle that are like really working, and we sort of like keep playing the things that are really working and like paying attention to the like workingness or not workingness, that I feel like I've had a lot of success with that, just inside of myself and in like my own, like, I think there's like an inner dialogue, there's like the inner conversations, and I feel like I've experienced success with my inner conversations in a way that I really want to experience with my outer conversations. Um, and I feel like for the last 6 years, I have been on a journey trying to like bring the magic that feels like it exists in my inner conversations into outer, like my outer discourse. Um, and Logos feels like it gets at that. It feels like it has some of that magic, and that's why I continue to be interested in it.
Hmm. Well, what I'm thinking about first thing when you say that is, do we have logos here? Or what would it mean to have logos in this conversation? And the second thing that comes up is, so what is logos? Is it like a skill? Is it like a frame? Is it like an object, a framework, a process?
Uh-huh.
Those are some questions that I'm sitting with.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What was the first thing that you asked? Or the first thing
Yeah.
you said?
I was wondering.
Oh, do we have logos here?
Yeah. Could we treat this conversation, or maybe even our inner dialogues, as like a real playground for logos? And I'm not saying it needs to happen like right now immediately, but I'm just curious if we can somehow like come back to that across the conversation.
That makes sense. That makes sense.
There's like a desire in me to get like an embodied sense of logos.
I guess I maybe first want to ask you, what do you like? What's your current understanding of like how do you understand logos right now? You have some sense. It has some meaning for you already.
Yes. It sounds kind of cool.
Yeah.
Like logos.
Word.
It's a word. I guess I am thinking about it as a quality. I think in some of our previous conversations, I had a sense that maybe each one of us, already the way we speak, has some logos in it.
Yeah.
And
wouldn't work if it didn't.
Yeah. So I guess maybe I'm mapping it a bit onto conversational style, or I'm remembering this concept of like speech acts. Like it's like in between communication and performance.
Mm-hmm.
And I also have this experience often when I am like quite relaxed, connected with myself, like maybe after a meditation or in some altered state of mind, where the words that come out of my mouth just feel very kind of like flowing, or very intuitive and very natural, and there isn't that much thinking about what I'm saying. There's just the thing is being said through me, and I'm somehow wondering if that is maybe also like the logos quality. Those are some things that I think about.
Yeah, cool. So that's actually very close to what I was going to say. I think logos is actually several things that we're applying the same word to. But the first thing that I was going to say is logos is quality.
Yes.
And like I think it's most obvious when like when somebody introduces an idea into a conversation that has a lot of resonance for either them or for like both people, something where you like finally name something and you're like, oh yeah, that's it, or like, oh like yeah, that's like a great point, and it's sort of, it changes like the whole conversation, like that like that utterance, or like that, often it's like one word. Like the other week you were like, I want to be very practical in this conversation, and that word practical like had quite a lot of logos for you and for us, because it sort of like made your intentions clear, And like whereas before they might have been kind of nebulous, so it's cloud and stuff, and then it sort of brings them into like a central point. And it might not be all of your intentions or whatever, but it like brings a lot of clarity. Um, yeah, and so I think logos is at least a quality. Um, I think it is also like the original Greek. It has like several different meanings. One of them is just like word. Another one is discourse. Um, Another one is reason, and it also means like account. Like
So like counting things?
no,
No.
like to give an account. Like
Oh.
here is my account of this thing,
Right.
which is sort of like a structured
Mhm.
like here is my account of what happened at the battle of whatever.
Yeah.
Um, and so like I think uh, we can talk about like our logos, meaning like the conversation that we have or like the discourse that we have. And I think that's kind of a different use than sort of pointing to the quality in like a single thing. Yeah, so like there's like the discourse part, like sort of as like an object. Yeah, actually, maybe a better way to put it is like today I was thinking about logos as a space, um,
Cool.
where like or discourse as a space. Actually, is maybe more clear. Where like discourses, you can think of it as like a palace, and like if you're talking about like one thing with a person, that's like a room that you're in, and like the room can be like very understandable to you. You're like, I know this is a bedroom, and like there's the bed, there's like like there's the bathroom, there's the like I know this room, or the room could be very confusing to you, and you're like, I don't know, this room is very dark. I don't even know what these. I see some different weirdly shaped objects. There's like that guy. There's like that weird creature in the corner, and you're like, I don't know, like what's happening. Um, uh, and I think it also makes sense. So I think logos can refer to like the space um, of discourse, and it can also refer to like the quality of a good space. Um, where, for example, you come in a room and you're like, wow, this room like really speaks to me. Like I don't know, like it just makes me like it has some art on the walls, and I'm like, wow, this art is amazing. Like it really says something to me. I love looking at it. Like it feels very meaningful, and so on. So like that painting like has a lot of logos, for you. And it's sort of it has a quality.
Yeah. So I guess in some sense I'm thinking about our conversation and how we created the space. We brought in the nice chairs, we have our tea. So that's like one aspect of the space. But I'm imagining there's also something like less physical, less tangible.
Yeah.
And yeah, I wonder if
I mean, so
speak to that.
I guess it sounds like you maybe already have an idea about it.
Well, we could have a nice space and still have a bad discourse in it.
Yeah. I guess. So like the most obvious thing to me is just like what is the language that you're using? Like what's the there's often like it's sort of annoying to like get really meta, but like if we're talking about a particular problem that you have, I don't know, what is a problem that you've been thinking about?
So let's take this one where I like think a little bit too much about how I'm speaking, that it actually gets in the way of speaking. A problem.
Yeah, I thought about a different problem, which is I think will maybe be maybe like we have been talking about like the future, like our future, and recently, and like earlier yesterday, you were like, I think maybe talking about like our future sucks.
Oh yeah.
And like that's just not a good way to talk about it.
Yeah.
And you're basically complaining about the logos. You're like, the logos around this sucks.
Yeah. I feel like it's like vague. I feel like we don't really know what we mean by that. We could be actually meaning different things. And also it's overwhelming, this idea of our future.
Yeah.
So those are all the ways in which I feel like that frame is not helping us actually talk about the thing that we want to talk about.
Right. So, like I think there's like a vocabulary around it. So like when we're talking about like our future, maybe some of the big objects in there are like, what do I want? What do you want? Like what are our constraints? Like what are the possibilities?
Yeah.
And like this is sort of like mapping out the room, where there are different wants. There's like this future thing. There is like possibilities in there.
Fears. Also.
Yeah, fears.
Dreams.
Yes, there are many things.
Yeah, yeah.
And those make up sort of the furniture of that room, or like the inhabitants of that room.
Yeah.
And like if they like really, I don't know, there's a quality to like that room being good for what we want it for, or not. And like, so right now you're saying like kind of it has like bad logos. The logos doesn't feel good. And I can imagine it gaining more logos, gaining more of the good quality. Like either by like we can sort of get a better, like more useful relationship to like future, or we could like add some, maybe there's three different things. We could like get a better relationship to some of the things in the room, or in a way that like sort of opens things up. We could also like pick some different language entirely, and that's sort of like opening a door to a different room. Like maybe instead of talking about the future, we can talk about like what path we're on or something, and there will be like sort of a whole different vocabulary around that. Yeah, or we could like maybe add some things that really like end up changing our relationship to the things, and yeah.
So it sounds a little bit like looking for logos or looking to like improve logos. It sounds like it's an activity of trying to find more space in the room, like either by changing the relationship to the things in the room, or by remodeling it, I guess, or maybe just choosing a different room altogether.
Yeah.
I don't know if I'm sort of like mapping it like in the way that you meant it, but that's what came up as a metaphor.
Yeah.
I guess I'm really enjoying this connection between logos and space.
Yeah, I thought you might. It's also helping me think about it.
Yeah. How did you stumble upon this connection?
So it was originally during the dialogue thing, like when we were debriefing, and I think maybe you brought up that you liked that connection with space or something, because I think, or somehow during the debrief of the conversation with, or sorry, not the conversation,
the talk we listened to from Catherine McGee.
Yeah, from Catherine. Somehow in that debrief, we started talking about space.
Right. I guess I remember now, and I actually did want to bring that in because there was a sense that in that talk that when they talked about logos, and specifically they asked about embodying logos in whatever way feels intuitive, I was just feeling like my arms open and this sense of like holding space for what's in between, for the relations that are happening.
Right.
And so logos just felt like this like space around the thing.
And that was different than like I hadn't thought about it that way before, but it kind of like once we talked about it a little bit, it makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
Like I'm used to thinking of it in sort of like a word-centric way, uh, like logos being made of, or like being a quality of words or a quality of discourse.
Yeah.
Um, and so I guess to me it's like about the quality of the room. Like you're in a discourse, you're in a conversation, and the like it can be good. It can like feel good. It can like let you do things. It can like you can sort of feel like a kind of comfort and understanding, and like so the room can like fit you and it can like work well, or it can be like awkward and confusing and like kind of scary and stuff. And that's like those are all bad logos.
Mm.
And I think there's different. I think I've been thinking about is I think there are maybe different like different qualities of logos that can be important, um, and that maybe in like for the past I don't know many centuries, I'm not sure. Maybe we've been like sort of prioritizing uh, like truth logos or something, or like whether things are accurate. Um, and uh, and then I think maybe now there is a need for what I've been thinking of as like heartiness. Um, that's like uh, where the words like really work for individuals. Like they like you have some words that work for you, that like resonate with you and like what matters to you and so on.
Mm.
And um, and like also the like the atmosphere. Like I think atmosphere, uh, like if we bring very different attitudes to a conversation, then that's gonna be like it's gonna the room is gonna feel very different.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So this last point makes me think about like examples of what you're describing in the real world. So let's say when I think about the like rationality community,
Yeah.
there's some logos like this phrase comes to mind like your mileage may vary that people use.
Yeah.
What's like another like rationalist community logos like example that you can think of?
Oh, do they really
Something...
say that all the time?
Yeah, so, I feel like people use it a lot.
Okay, interesting. So
it's like a phrase that like became a thing.
That's true, but I think that's just a phrase in the wider world also. Maybe the rationalists make special use of it. That's interesting. I hadn't really thought about that one. So like rationalists love to talk about models.
Or tractability also, I guess, is another one that comes to mind.
Yeah, that's more like EA, but yeah.
Yeah. So that's like some examples from the rationality community.
Yeah.
And then I'm thinking like there's the spiritual world and there's like phrases like heart opening or like ground yourself in the earth or something. And those are like kinds of logos that you encounter there.
Yeah.
And I guess what you're trying to say is like more hearty logos would be like I hear that phrase and I try to like feel it in myself and I find like my own words for it that somehow express better the experience of grounding myself in the earth.
Yes, I think I mean several things by Hearty. I think I mean several things by Hearty. The way that I started thinking about it was sort of a combination of things that are warm and things that are thick, where things that are warm, like sort of they have some love in them. Like a hot cup of tea can like be very warm in that sort of like it warms your body, and it warms like not just because it's physically warming you, but like it's like cozy and comforting in a way that I think probably does kind of open your heart in some way. And then I think a sort of a different thing is like things that like ideas that feel thick. where you're like, oh yeah, this idea like sort of does a lot somehow. It's like putting on like a heavy coat like to like battle the cold instead of like putting on a t-shirt, and a t-shirt feels very thin versus like a thick coat where you're like, yeah, this is doing something.
Yeah.
And like so I think, for example, like the idea of a model does a lot for rationalists. It's like a thick idea, and like, and I think lots of us, like you and I, both go through like phases where like particular ideas are like feeling especially thick to us, and we're sort of like picking those up and like collecting them.
Yeah. Yeah.
And like I think hearty, like a hearty stew is like a thick stew that's just like both warm and like thick and nourishing, and I think that does like the sort of the nourishing aspect. That I think that like I don't know. Basically, all of those three like have some like idiosyncrasy to them, and we can like pay attention to like whether things are hearty or not.
Yeah. So I'm experiencing something, which I'm now actually wondering if I can put that through in terms of logos. I think I actually often have this experience where you've just brought in a lot of concepts that are quite meaningful to you, and you've thought about, and you sort of like they have space inside you. And I have started experiencing a little bit of like a squeezing of space.
Interesting.
Yeah. Which I now am wondering, maybe it is because you're bringing like big concepts that are now taking up space. And I'm like, whoa, oh, okay.
Yeah. You're
and I'm
surrounded.
feeling a little bit like squeezed.
Yeah.
And one idea that I had for bringing a bit more space is, I guess I just want to check in with both of us. How are we doing? How are we feeling in this conversation? And I noticed myself feeling a little bit in that, or like framing myself a little bit again in that role of like, I need to ask like a good question. I need to like elicit stuff from you. And I guess I would like to be more relaxed somehow. And maybe that idea of like hanging out at our edges together, or like being real together is quite evocative for me.
Yeah.
But that's like a part of my logos now here. And I wonder if just thinking about it can like help me bring more of this into the space. And yeah, and I guess the way I would go about it is there's a desire in me to get kind of under the concepts of it and feel the meaning that this thing has for you. And I'm curious if you'd be interested in that. Yeah.
I guess so. I want to bring in myself a little bit also. So I think I also don't feel that great in the conversation. I feel like a little bit performative, and a little bit like I'm not really sure what I'm doing, and yeah, like a little bit like on rails or something. And
sorry, I'm just gonna bring that. I'm imagining a future like description of this talk, and it's like a talk where we get lost and then we use logos to find ourselves again. I wonder if it can help us actually, if this concept can help us figure out.
I think it might.
What to do.
Yeah. Yeah. And so I guess like I sort of feel like I don't know either of our true purposes here or something, or like feel like kind of out of touch with that.
Yeah.
And I had an idea come to mind of like asking you like if this conversation is is like a palace that you have come to,
Mm.
and you're like in a particular place in the palace. Like, how is that place feeling?
Mm. Mm.
About that for myself.
For some reason, the idea that came to mind was like a changing room, or like a place where you rehearse. Or maybe a different angle. Maybe I've come into like a family dinner, and everyone is like kind of dressed nice, and I'm trying to like sit on my chair and engage in like a conversation that feels a little bit shallow, and I'm having this feeling that more could happen here, but I don't know how to go about it.
Yeah. Yeah. And do you have a sense of what you wished it felt like?
Mm. Yes. I imagine like a, I don't know, let's say my room, or like a cosmic room in the palace
Cosmic
where
room.
it's
All
like
right.
dark, there's curtains, and you come in and there's futons on the floor and bean bags and blankets, and there are these like galaxy lamps where we can like lie down together and just like stare at the galaxy lamps and have like awe for this cool thing we're looking at.
Yeah.
I guess that's how I like to feel like.
Okay. Gotcha. And yeah, I'm sort of struck by the fact that like there's sort of an object that we're looking at.
Yes.
And it's like the logos object. How
Yes.
does the logos object like seem now in like the family dinner scenario?
Maybe it's like this new dish that someone made that like no one really wants to eat, gets like ignored.
Okay. Yeah. That seems terrible. Yeah, that makes sense.
Mushy peas.
Mushy peas.
I don't know. I mean,
I don't think I've really got the appeal of mushy peas.
Yeah. I mean, okay. I think maybe this is a bit too harsh. I don't think I think we have touched something about logos.
Yeah.
But this idea of wanting to be at the edge of our thinking is enticing to me. Like, for example, I am curious, what is something that you're confused about in this space of logos? Or are there some avenues that you are just exploring or want to explore? What doesn't make sense yet about it? Those are some curiosities that I have. And I'm also open that there's like a different avenue that you're excited to go down.
I think just like lots about it is confusing. I'm not really sure how to express that. I guess like sort of feels confusing by default. Like I'm like logos is a quality. Like what is the best way to like feel that, or like what kind of quality? I feel like I have words to say about that. I'm not sure they're right. Like, why exactly is it exciting to me?
That's the one that piques me. I notice. The why.
Yeah. I notice I feel afraid.
Oh. What's the fear like?
The fear is like sort of being demanded from.
Give me your meaning.
Yeah.
Okay. I guess I'm a little bit inspired by like the exercise we did earlier with my friend Jared, where I feel like I was able to touch or like be with you in your meaning about a song that you like. And I think that's the quality I'm looking for here. Like, I wonder if I could somehow understand what moves you in exploring this concept. There's like some sort of deeper thing here that is pulling you in so much into this word, this quality. And yeah, I guess it would feel meaningful for me to get like an experience of the meaning.
And do you have a sense about how?
Do you have a sense of how it worked earlier today with the song for you? Like on that second try?
I mean, I had just experienced it like more strongly.
Because you listened to the song.
Yeah.
I guess I'm curious if there is an equivalent to listening to the song with Logos.
I mean, sort of an obvious equivalent is like a lot of words just have special meaning to me. And I can like feel the meaning of them. Maybe the even more logosy thing would be like sort of experiencing like a new connection or like a new thing in a word. That would be like, yeah, more logosy.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think I want to think about how does this room feel to me.
Cool.
Okay, I think maybe the room has been feeling like a little bit bureaucratic or something. Like there's some forms to fill out or
and
something,
stamps.
and stamps or something like that.
Yeah.
And also I'm like sort of not sure like what is the object or something. But I think the thing that the description you gave of your like cosmic room with like a central object, and you're like you just like stand back and admire it, and you're like, whoa, it's a cool object.
Yeah.
That feels evocative to me, and feels like it sort of that gives me like a picture of the room or of like the object.
This is the room you'd want to visit with me. Or do you have a different like better room in mind?
What is my room? I think that feels like an exciting room to start in, or that seems like an exciting room to visit. I don't know if that's the room I want to stay in, or like that's how I want the room to stay. But it does feel exciting to me.
Yeah.
And then I'm like, well, what is the quality, or like, how do we get there? And I think it makes me want to ask a question, which is like, what has felt like this kind of object before? Like, what's...
Yeah, do you have like another version of this question?
Like, does it feel like there's a different object that would be like easier to place in that room? Like maybe relational rigor, or just relationships
Mm.
or wants.
Well, it's interesting because I guess you're naming all the things that I have thought some about or have some theories about.
Yeah.
So I guess I wonder if the implication here is that, like, somehow having some existing original thoughts about something is like a prerequisite for it to be an object.
I don't. No. I don't. I didn't mean to have that implication.
Yeah.
Or in fact, like, I'm trying to use your standard. Like Sandra. Now we're doing some like room decorating.
Actually, maybe I have an idea.
Yeah.
I think maybe what's happening is it's not like Logos is not in the cosmic room.
Yeah.
But there are some of these lights that just show you dots or something. These like laser lights that are very simple.
Yeah.
So it's like that. And I'm looking for this like galaxy lamp experience, like more dimensional. So I think maybe the concept of Logos has been a little bit flat for me.
Yeah.
And I'm trying to make it more like a cube with
Yeah.
you, like to see more dimensions. And so I'll just tell you like where I'm drawn to already.
Yeah.
Like, one unexpected thing that happened was when we went silent for a bit, I was suddenly struck by the thought of, oh, can silence have Logos? And I think yes.
Mm-hmm.
And that feels like a
makes
new
sense to me.
dimension.
Yeah.
That I haven't thought about before. And it feels kind of exciting. And then the other thing that feels exciting is you mentioned this inner dialogue and having Logos there.
Yeah.
That seems like super interesting to me.
Yeah.
I think I have often been more satisfied with my outer Logos than my inner Logos.
I see.
And feeling like
the
way
reverse for me.
And feeling like the way I talk to myself inside of me is actually damaging sometimes to me.
Yeah.
And then there's like a third dimension somewhere there, which is something like, why does the world need this? And how to bring it to the world. So those are like at least three sides of the cube that I'm interested in looking more at.
Yeah, gotcha. Okay, so it's just a little bit like you want to turn on lots of spotlights. You want to turn on lots of lights.
Yeah, have a more immersive experience with Logos.
More immersive. Okay. Really turn it into a dramatic museum piece. Yeah, interesting. What was the one that's
Silence and Logos.
Silence. Yeah, so that feels pretty legit to me. Like where, sometimes like I don't know, blocks of silence. I feel like there's a better word, but like sort of like even like long bits of silence in a conversation transform the conversation because they like allow it. Like I have been thinking about like inner logoses and outer logoses, and like you have an inner logos and I have an inner logos. If we have silence, like right now we're sort of like mostly dealing with our shared like outer logos, but like if we go silent, then sort of our inner logoses like get more space to just churn.
Oh yeah, I like that.
And then like something can happen there.
Yeah.
And that changes the outer logos.
Yes. And it creates space, right?
I think I don't understand how it creates space. That makes sense.
Like if we just go back and forth, there's that squeezing. And then I feel like silence like makes it like an opening or like a bit of a breathing room. At least that's how I experience it.
I think I don't quite understand like where you say like it creates space, and I think that maybe has special meaning to you that I'm not quite.
It's my logos.
Yeah, there's clearly something in there, and I don't think I understand it. Yeah.
Well, I think sometimes interactions can feel like they are sort of reciprocally closing. We are like narrowing, and especially if it feels like we are kind of heading in the wrong direction, or like we're heading into like a narrowing, I feel like silence and just taking a moment can like expand the scope of like paths in that conversation again.
Yeah.
So that's how I mean it.
Gotcha. Yeah, that definitely seems true to me. Yeah. I'm not sure quite how to put that in the metaphor, but yeah. I agree with that.
But I really like this idea that silence also like creates, or I guess it gives more weight to the inner logos.
Yeah.
And that changes the outer logos.
Right.
Yeah, I think that's pretty cool. Yeah.
Does it sounds like the idea of inner logos is kind of already resonating with you. What do you have more to say about it?
Well, I guess the way I'm thinking about it is it's been now a couple of years that I have been like explicitly trying to improve the quality of my inner dialogue and be more compassionate and understanding and accepting of myself inside of myself. So there's that. And then, you know, also from knowing you, I know that you can spend many hours by yourself just within your inner world. And this is also something that I don't always feel like I have access to. Like it doesn't always feel nourishing and hearty. It can actually make me quite anxious sometimes, or like really go like wrapped up in a certain story. And so how to keep that like fertile, hearty logos inside of myself is of interest. And I wonder if there's something I could learn here.
Although I see you use it to great effect sometimes.
Same on.
Like some I don't know, there was like a time when we were first started dating, where like I was sleeping on the couch and like the sun was setting. It was like near the new year, maybe it was New Year's Day or something, and you were like sitting and you like mapped out your like your year, or like you just thought about your future then, and then you were like, that was amazing, like it was perfect. And yeah, and it clearly like that time helped you like bring some things together, think through some things, like imagine different possibilities, and sort of like gain a picture of what you wanted in the near future.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, I mean, I guess I'm not trying to say that I never do this.
Yeah.
But maybe what I'm drawn to is I wonder if we can take.
I'm not just saying that you like sometimes do this. Like I'm just saying, like you have, or like I want to draw attention to the fact that it is like a thing that works very well for you sometimes.
Mm. Yeah. And so immediately I noticed there's this desire in me to be like, all right, how is it when it works well? Or like, is there a process or formula that we can come up with for how to have this kind of logos internally? And I guess the thought that came to mind, and this is also something that I'm quite excited about in these conversations, is also just like having experiences as we are in a conversation. So I wonder if there's like space here for you to maybe like help me explore my inner logos around some stories I've had about my life recently. And if that having that like little activity could like help us gain some new dimension on logos, just like experientially.
That sounds pretty good. Yeah, let me think about for 1 second, because I had some thoughts. Maybe a dimension which feels kind of interesting to that I'm sort of distinguishing now is their, like everybody takes with them their sort of implicit logos of just like, well, this is like what I think about things and how I talk about things and stuff. Like it's like made up of like my opinions and my vocabulary and so on. And then there is like the active logos of like, let me take some time, like that, and the like the implicit logos sort of doesn't take up any space, or it doesn't take up very much space because it's not you're not unfolding it. And then there is like a more explicit logos of like, let me take some time and like have a conversation with myself, or like take some notes or journal or something like that. Which is like where you're actually like unfolding, and you're like, let me try like typing this, and let me try thinking about this prompt, and let me make this drawing.
Okay, cool. You know, I'm just making a connection now with like authentic relating or circling, where actually what it is in this logos frame is like you're just learning how to bring more your inner logos into your outer logos. Like it's about actually like surfacing these internal stories or thoughts or noticings, right? Which normally we just like keep in.
Right.
And we only like produce something that we feel is acceptable and on point and whatever useful to the conversation.
Yeah.
And I guess in those relational spaces, like you learn that, oh no, these things can be useful and you can actually bring them forward.
And maybe you like shift into having, maybe like there's a thing where in normal culture, like inner logos and outer logos are like kind of disconnected, or like not in like strong connection. And like circling and authentic relating and stuff maybe are like about like having things like sort of maybe mostly by like moving things in the inner logos into the outer logos to like have them have more of a dialogue.
Yes. And I'm also even thinking about like stream of consciousness kind of writing. Well, that's kind of like making art out of your inner logos.
Yeah.
Yeah, cool. I noticed myself just like more into the conversation now. That's what just happened.
Yeah.
Maybe it's because it's like logos is a little bit like your frame that I'm like looking at with you, but then now I feel like I have found a way to anchor it in something that is quite familiar to me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, interesting. I've also been so the like, let's put many points, like let's put many lights on this object thing kind of makes me think. Something I was thinking about today is I think maybe logos has something to do with resonance, and like what things resonate how much. And some things, like some ideas, resonate with like a bunch of different parts of us. And some just like resonate with like one part. And I think logos has something to do with like things that resonate with many things at once.
Well, I don't think that was my experience of logos when I started hearing about it, but maybe I'm starting to feel like it is now becoming like augmented in my existing like inner riches.
Yeah. I mean, I just mean like the quality that matters to me feels like it has something to do, like, I don't know, the thing that feels most like the true logos or something feels like it has something to do with things that are resonating with many things at once.
Yeah. It has that like multi-resonance quality.
Yeah.
Cool. Okay. So, should we try?
Yeah, let's try it.
Okay. Maybe I should name a story that I've been having about my life.
Yeah.
I need to make decisions.
You need to make decisions. All right.
I need to make a lot of decisions, and I need to make them quickly.
Cool. So, okay. Let me ask you a question. What would you like me to do here?
I want you to help me find a better logos. The one that doesn't make me want to hide in a hole and escape from the world.
Okay. And would you like me to sort of like guide a little bit and like pull you along, or would you like me to sort of follow along and like make suggestions?
Well, I guess I'm a little bit curious if you've already been coming up with some sort of guiding exercises around this or not. But
I don't have one pre-made, but I do feel like I can make something up as we go. I am
down to experiment.
All right. So the thought that comes to mind is like um, is like the thing that you mentioned, does it feel like a whole room? Does it feel like a whole space? Or is it just an object in a space?
I don't immediately know how to answer this question, but
Okay.
I'm imagining, or like the thing that came up was, there's the space of my life, and I think it's like taking up a lot of space in that space of my life. This story that I need to make a lot of decisions.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. What I'm just gonna treat it as an object.
Okay.
Like what like if this like what kind of object is this?
So maybe it's like a big hole.
It's a big hole. Yeah, all right.
But I mean like a HALL.
Yeah.
Hole. Yeah, okay, cool.
HOLE.
No.
Oh, a hell.
No. HALL.
Oh, a hall.
Like a dining
Interesting.
hall.
Okay.
Because I just said
Okay.
like it takes a lot of space in the house, right?
Gotcha.
That's why I'm thinking about a hall.
Gotcha. It's a hall. Okay. And what is the hall like inside of it?
Well, maybe it just has a bunch of like little podiums, and each podium has a displayed like decision area on
Okay.
it. So you can like walk around and you see all these decisions that you need to make.
And
maybe also each of the objects is a kind of like a vague cloud.
okay.
And you need to do something to like disperse the cloud and see the actual thing.
I see. Yeah. Okay. And I'm imagining it doesn't feel very good to be in there or to like look at any of the podiums.
It feels like a lot of work and a lot of confusion. Yeah.
Yeah.
Maybe also it's cold in the hall.
It's cold in the hall. Yeah. Yeah. How do you feel in the hall?
Tight, kind of like, you know, when it's cold and you're just like, it's unclear which podium to start with. There's
Yeah.
like no directions.
It's kind of overwhelming.
Yeah. I'm kind of hungry. Also, there's like this other hall where there's a party, and I could just go there and forget about this.
Yeah.
But maybe I was told to be here by like a person of authority. So I kind of feel like I have to stay here.
Interesting.
Otherwise, there will be some consequences.
Yeah. And do you have like an image of that person of authority?
I was kind of thinking about a mother. Yeah.
Okay.
Let's go with mother.
Okay. Yeah. There's a mother who's like scolds you and tells you like
go there and figure out all these objects in the podium.
Yeah. Okay. And,
otherwise, you're gonna be screwed.
And can you name this hall?
I don't know. Hall of life decisions.
The idea that came to me was like hall of decisions.
Hall of decisions. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So
the hall of like the inevitable hall of decisions.
The inevitable hall of decisions. All right. And so this place kind of sucks. It's a shitty place. And like I imagine what happens when you go in there?
Well, I go in there, the big doors close behind me, and I hear the lock.
Terrible.
And I'm like, oh, there's like a vapor coming out of my mouth when I breathe. And yeah, and I like come up to the first podium, and I see it has like no label, or maybe it has like a vague label like money, and I see there's the object that's like behind a cloud, and yeah, and I'm like, oh, how do I even like get started? I go to the next podium, and it has like a vague label like visa, like illegal immigrant. And there's this person in like in handkerchief in
handcuffs.
Yeah, in handcuffs, being taken to the prison.
I see. Yeah.
It's like an image.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. I feel like I could go on a journey, but already there's this like objection inside me where I'm like, well, it's not that bad in your real life. It's not like you're only seeing like negatives, and
Yeah.
there's like a little bit of an objection.
And is this mom again?
No, that's more like me. That's more
Okay.
like the actual me.
Interesting.
That's like the me who believes that there is actually a better story here, and I probably already have it, but I'm somehow attached to this other story.
Interesting. And so here's kind of what I imagine doing. Like, I imagine going to somewhere that feels better in this palace. Like let's leave this place and go to a place that feels better. And imagine you like call some friends together in the good place, and like one of the cozier spots in the palace, and then be like if you imagine trying to formulate a plan to go to like actually sort of deal with the hall, like what do you imagine doing? And the idea is not that we're gonna like do that plan, but just like what plan would come up.
Yeah. Well, first thing that comes up is I like the fact that you said friends, because I think that is already the better story. Like, I think I actually don't need to figure it out all on my own. That feels true, but I think there's still like a way in which I do feel like actually I do need to figure it out on my own. No one else can do it for me. So there's this rift between these two stories there.
Yeah.
Maybe there needs to be like a bridge between these rooms somehow. So there's the room with friends where they all help you and it's like new possibilities and stuff.
Yeah.
And there's this room where it's all my own. And somehow maybe they could merge a bit more. So that's one thing that came up. The other thing that came up was maybe we could like rebuild these objects in the new room with friends, and then bring like them into the hall, where I can look at them alone, because I think that's still needed. But the objects at least are more. They have gone through like a good massaging process.
They're like friendlier. They become warmer and thicker and stuff. They're more hardy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And maybe I want to also say more real.
That makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah, more nuanced or something like that.
Yeah, kind of. So like something about what I feel like my approach is here is sort of resonating between the two things, where like you can sort of try to do some thinking in like the friendly space, and then sort of try to apply it to the and be like, okay, like could I just do that in the unfriendly space, and then sort of that butts up against reality in some way, or like that butts up that like that's not necessarily going to translate immediately, and kind of the way that I'm thinking about it is like I've been enjoying thinking about elephant legs, where like there is some real world out there that you can sort of like feel with your hands, like with your eyes closed, and you can sort of like feel the territory, and the this like logos world. The logos world is like our sight. It's like bringing it into like the blind man and the elephant metaphor. Um, it's like the blind men can feel with their hands, like the real world, and then their eyes are filled with images that are like mostly they're like preconceptions about things. And so like there's the blind man who's like touching the trunk, and he's like, it's a snake, and so what he sees is a snake. Um, and like the blind man who's like touching one of the elephant legs and is like, it's a tree, like what he sees is a tree. um, and and so but with his hands he's like actually touching the elephant, and so like it's not like he's totally out of contact with the world, but like it's sort of a messy contact.
Yeah.
And so there's like something that we're hoping that he can do, which is like sort of think in like the friendly space and then like try that on.
Yeah.
Like when he's touching like this leg and be like, does that actually fit? Like how does that, like how well does that fit?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. I like this because like I think with my hands, that metaphor makes me think about just like my day-to-day experience of my life, where let's just take today. I had a really good day. I like woke up, I had food, I had a great conversation with our friend, we had a great conversation, I went and did some work on things that I care about, I came back here, we're doing this conversation. So actually my life's great in the way that I'm touching it.
Yeah.
And then there's that story that something is not okay, you need to make decisions about your life, implying that your life's actually not okay. And that something is crumbling, in fact, and you need to make decisions fast.
Yeah.
And I guess maybe today when I looked at my bank account and I saw my savings, maybe that's like a part of that story. Maybe that's like a thing where it's like, oh, something is not okay. But even that, it's like, I just keep on coming back to this question of like, my experience of life is good. Like, what if I didn't have to make decisions? Like, is that possible? And I guess that's where I'm. This question of like, what if that's not true? What if I don't need to make decisions?
Mm-hmm.
That feels like the bridge somehow to something different.
That feels like the bridge to something. Okay.
Because I think there's something to like a certain story that you can be stuck in, where it kind of feels like there's no bridge out of it. It just feels very total. Like that's just what it is. You need to make decisions. But I feel like asking that question of like, do you? Somehow it's really hard to ask that question.
Mm-hmm.
But the moment I do, I'm like, well, maybe I don't. Or maybe I just need to make one decision for now. And maybe the decision could even just be like, am I just going to go along with the default, which is to do nothing new other than continue where I'm at?
Mm-hmm.
Just like say yes to how things are. Maybe that's the only decision I need to make for now. And that feels already like, oh, okay.
Okay. Interesting.
That seems kind of true. And it makes me feel relaxed. Yeah.
Okay, interesting.
So
I think I'm not, for what it's worth, I think I'm not like following that well, like the logos that you're putting out. It sounds like some things are changing in your inner logos, which is interesting.
well, I guess it's interesting because I think, I've already been sitting a bit with the sense that perhaps my story is a bit too limiting.
Yeah.
One-dimensional.
Yeah.
And I already had the sense that maybe I could just like flip it on its head and be like, what if it wasn't true? That's like a move that I can make.
Yeah.
But then I guess I wasn't really embracing it fully. I was just pondering that possibility. And then this conversation, and you bring me into this imagination of a room. It was kind of fun, and also it gave me this idea of a bridge. And then I just mapped it onto this question, which feels like this question is a bridge into a new story. I don't have the new story yet, but I have the bridge to it.
I see. Okay.
And I can walk it.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So this question is feeling, I guess what I'm gathering is like this question is feeling like a new place or something, where it opens a door to a bridge or something like that. Yes. And you're like, I think, something cool is happening, like crossing this bridge.
Yeah. Maybe for now, somehow I feel like I'm not quite ready to fully go and visit the other room, experience things there, go back to this room and figure out what the whole new story is. But
maybe that's more of a private activity, I can imagine.
But I guess
sort of vulnerable.
Yeah, but I guess the thing that I can already like sort of create or say in my inner logos is something like, you need to make less decisions than you think you need to.
Gotcha. Okay. Yeah, that makes sense.
That feels like new story.
Yeah. Gotcha. Cool. And it sounds like that it lands. It has like some real resonance.
Yeah. It's not like a mother's voice. It is like a wise friend voice.
Yeah. Okay.
Which is interesting, because I guess that makes me think that like logos is not just what is being spoken, but who is speaking it as well.
I do think like logos includes like the energies in things.
Yeah.
Like if I like you can just say different things, like things very differently. I can say like things angrily or things lovingly or things neutrally.
Yeah.
Etc. Like we can be like could you make a decision? Or like, could you make a decision?
Yeah.
And that's a different conversation. And yeah, so I think like
it triggers a very different inner logos too.
Right.
And so I guess maybe also it brings to mind this idea of how to make your inner logos, I want to say like resilient or stable, such that like things from the outside can't make you like shift 180 degrees how you're speaking to yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Like I don't want to be so susceptible to the energy you're inhabiting in terms of how I speak to myself. So I guess there's that question of like, how do you like stabilize your inner logos? Because I think that just seems like a good thing to have in a world where you encounter very different people with very different intentions.
Yeah.
Well, I'm noticing some meaning around this idea, because I guess I've been interested in how
the stabilization.
Yeah, like how do I have more self-trust?
Yeah, interesting.
And rely on myself more internally, like no matter what the environment is serving, sort of. Yeah, and so I guess this maybe, for me at least, this piece taps a bit more into why does the world need this logos thing, or like how it could be useful to talk more about this.
Yeah, interesting.
And yeah, maybe I guess I feel pretty like complete with my little exercise. I don't know if you feel like there was something else you were left with.
Yeah, not really. Like earlier I was gonna ask it doesn't sound like the fear that you're describing has like no hand touching like behind it. But you could sort of answer that with like it's then the question, or then the like the thing of like, well, you have to make fewer decisions than you think was like resonating.
Yeah.
And that's sort of, yeah, I kind of imagine like that room like gets a lot smaller, or something, or there's like one room and there's a staircase and it maybe goes up to future decisions or something, but um, yeah, but it's like it somehow like becomes a lot more manageable.
Yeah.
Yeah. I guess I would like to collect myself a little bit.
Another silence.
Yeah. Yeah.
I like that.
Yeah. I guess I'm curious, like how if we like revisit the cosmic room and we're like looking at the like logos object, um, like how is it looking? Like what lights are like still want to be lit up?
So I've been noticing that I feel close to completion.
Okay.
I feel like we've explored a little bit the silence. We've explored the inner logos. And maybe there's still that curiosity of like, why does the world need this?
Yeah.
And actually, there's maybe one point that I want to share that came up in the silence, which was a little bit of like a trickster voice being like, so what? Like, this idea of inner dialogue was there already. It's not like you invented it now.
Yeah.
And just sort of being like a little bit cynical that you just found a new word for the same thing that you already knew existed. It's logos now. But then I was like, well, yeah, but it really does do something to have like such a crisp one word for like this big space of ideas. Like it really like brings in together a bunch of things.
Yeah.
And really for me it also just it is one word that I can say in my head that carries all this sense of like expansion and possibility. And I'm like, well, it seems kind of efficient to have one word like that.
Yeah.
That carries this like embodied sense of expansion. And yeah, and I guess that must be useful somehow, beyond just like my own inner world.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I don't know, I guess I'm curious if there are some things that you would feel like sad you didn't mention if we just ended here.
I do have some things. So maybe something that is clearer now, like from what you just said, is like I think logos is at least three things. Logos is a quality. It's also like a thing. It's like the space of discourse, and I think it is also an ideal.
Yeah.
Which is sort of the combination of those two things, which is like basically the idea of like you could have spaces. It is possible to have spaces that have like a lot of that quality, and that looks like some things. And so that there's sort of the recognizing the quality is like very concrete, and like and the space, like the idea of discourse is also fairly concrete, but then the ideal is more abstract, and like the ideal is actually like pretty old. Like I definitely also didn't invent that. In some sense, it comes from the Greeks. Like the early Greeks, like sort of had this like thing of like logos is the use of reason in discourse, and then the Stoics were like the Stoics were like, logos is the rational organizing principle of the universe, which is like a much bigger idea.
Yeah.
And then the Christians like come along and they're like, Jesus and God are logos, like, and so like the ideal can go pretty high and pretty abstract.
Although I really feel like the Christian thing was kind of reducing it down to like a human or like an entity, like away from that very like vast sense of the organizing principle.
I certainly agree that it changes it. I think the Christian thing will turn out to be pretty deep. I don't feel like I like totally get
Sure.
it and stuff, but I think it is pretty deep.
Maybe it's just my Christian trauma.
I think maybe. Like, maybe the big thing that I like that comes from Christianity here is like, or the big thing that I like feel like I've discovered already is logos has, like, the word has creative power on its own. Like somehow like speaking the right words is creative and like
Yeah.
creates something.
Yeah, that's beautiful.
And
Yeah,
can set things in motion.
that resonates a lot.
And like we saw that today in you, where you're like this finding this question like creates this new bridge.
Totally. Yeah, that resonates a lot.
And I guess I'm not 100% certain that that like comes like only from Christianity, but it feels like it's most visible to me in Christianity.
And actually, this was like explicitly pointed out in this Conversations with God book.
Okay, you're right.
The sense
Yeah.
that the word is a thing that then leads to an action.
Yeah.
And that is the creative force. Yeah.
But there's also just like a much more concrete ideal that we can have about like what does like right conversation look like, or what does right discourse look like.
Yeah, and our discourse is shit.
Our discourse is kind of shit. Yeah, and our discourse is kind of shit at like many different levels.
Yeah. Starting with inner discourse.
Starting with inner discourses, yeah. And so like I guess getting into this question of like why does the world need this? I guess it seems to me like our world has a lot of incoherence. And like incoherence that currently is threatening us, where we're like, will we survive? We don't know. And there's like humans have like a natural, like have natural forces that sort of lead to making things more coherent and safer and stuff. Like they can use their reason and their like prudence and their wisdom and stuff to like make things good and like be like, well, it seems like this mountain might landslide onto our village. Maybe let's like move further away from it so that it doesn't landslide onto our village, to like avoid catastrophes. But it doesn't seem somehow like when we like zoom out to like the big problems, it seems like that it doesn't feel like it can take place that easily, or somehow like we struggle to like do that. And it feels related to discourse. It feels related to like low quality logos, or logos without like the right properties or something. Like even within rationality circles, like for ages and ages, like people like sort of try to discuss important topics. They discuss like various things about AI risk, and those discussions just don't seem very good. Like they're often talking past each other. They're like, they feel like they're wrapped up in things that aren't that important, and like not, I don't know, they're just like not that good.
I mean, maybe it's because that's the bad kind of, or like the flat kind of, I don't know if we can call it logos even, but just sort of like trading different words and throwing concepts at each other, but without really getting underneath the...
I don't think it's like an inherent property of like the way that people have had discussions, or maybe it is. I think it's like the priorities that people have had are not sufficient anymore, and like we
The
need
priorities, you said.
the priorities.
Like what?
Like science got started because people were really excited about like let's say true things, like let's figure out what's going on, like sort of physically and stuff, and then like say true things about that.
Yeah.
And that like worked real good. Like it did a lot, very impressive.
Yeah.
And then and like rationalists like really prize those things in a way that like helps in some ways, and then I think they have like lost other priorities over, or they're sort of they have some blindness to some other priorities that are important.
Yeah. And now I guess many people are coming out and saying, well, actually, let's say wise things, not just true things.
Yeah. And that feels like it sort of gets at more of the priority, or like that feels like it gets more in like there's a question of like what is logos now? Like I feel like you can feel the quality when like the words that you say like really resonate with the moment. And actually, today I found it useful to think about like words or actions or even silences like resonate with the discourse itself. And I think we can notice that feeling and like when it's happening to sort of like slowly like sort of like feel our way more in the right direction. You seem like you're about to say something.
Well, it's just interesting because I think maybe in the last few minutes, maybe I feel like the words haven't been resonating that much with the discourse, which makes me think, well, this resonating is like a interpersonal quality or so, or maybe not interpersonal, but like a co-held quality.
Yeah, for sure. Like maybe they're resonating a bit, or like they're resonating for me and they're really not resonating for you, and me learning that sort of like dampens my resonance, like it changes things.
Yeah.
I'm curious if you can speak to the non-resonance.
I was feeling a little bit like maybe we're moving further away from some the word that comes to mind was like a tangent, but I don't think that's quite what it was. I think it just started feeling to me like I'm losing something.
Yeah.
Like I'm disconnecting from what's being talked about. And I'm like not sure why there's so many words. Yeah, something like that. And now that I said it, I'm like a little bit worried that I'll offend you. But
I mean, it does hurt a little bit.
Yeah. But I guess maybe I just want to say, I wonder if you could say the thing you just said once again in like one sentence or something. Not that it needs to be one sentence, but I'm just curious if you could sort of say it again.
I think I'm tempted to like turn it around and ask you like first what like well, okay. Like what are you wanting?
Yeah. I guess I'm like looking for a closure.
You're looking for a closure.
Yeah. That's what's happening for me.
Yeah.
Maybe my conversational steam is running out. But there's also something that I feel like I'm just like genuinely missing. I feel like we just said something that was really interesting, and I feel like I can't remember it, and that's like a very weird experience. But it was in the area of like, why does this matter to the world? And Yeah, I feel like you said something that was quite evocative, and then you said some things that I kind of got lost in.
I see.
And I'm like trying to find my way back to the place that I last felt had logos, and I can't.
Yeah. Yeah, what were we saying? We were like talking about
Well, you were talking about logos as an ideal.
Yeah.
Oh, I think I know. Okay, I think I know actually, because you said something, and then I had like a whole idea, but I felt like I couldn't quite bring it in because you continued talking. But the idea was basically that if word is like the source of creative action,
Oh yeah.
I was relating that to AI, and I almost felt it's like a whole different conversation. But in some sense, it's interesting that AI operates on words, and it could lead to actions that are actually quite destructive. And I somehow like am intrigued by talking about logos in the context of AI. Yeah.
Yeah, interesting.
So that was something that sparked some energy in me.
Yeah, I don't yet have traction myself on that or something. It does seem kind of interesting. Like, yeah, a lot of LLM stuff. Like AI itself can do a lot of different things, but LLMs are like specific, or the language models are about words.
Yeah.
Does feel interesting. I guess I have a question of like, if we have, maybe something that worries me is the idea of like people trying to like build good logos, like just them, and or like sort of in a way that's like very AI centric. That seems kind of doomed to me, or feels worrying at least.
It sounds like you have a sense of like an alternative that would be better.
Yeah, I mean, I think an alternative is if you imagine people who have good logos, people who like have skill with logos, and like especially like with each other.
Yeah.
Like not just like individual people who are skilled with logos, but like groups of people who like have a very general skill with logos, and then they like bring their question, like bring the question of like what does it mean to like bring AI abilities, AI tools into their logos, which does feel important. Like somehow we have to, yeah, I don't know. It does feel important.
So it's more like AI teams have logos.
That I don't like that sentence.
No.
But I mean, AI team just sounds like very much not a generalist.
No, I just meant more like it's not that the AI has logos. It's more like people who are building AI have logos with each other.
Yeah, but that's what I'm saying. Like that doesn't sound good to me.
Okay. I want to hear a better version.
I guess like they're like
there's just more logos in society.
You can have logo if you just have like a bunch of people who are like very good at talking about making machine learning progress. That is a certain kind of logos. I don't feel excited about them like being like all right, and now we have like figured out how to like translate like to talk really good with the AIs. Like I'm like, gosh, that seems problematic. Or like, I don't know. It seems like a thing it is already happening, but it feels worrying.
Yeah.
But there's like a different kind of logos that's like a more general purpose logos, where like people have the ability to talk about science and like sort of logos, like bring in logos from there, and talk about like what is wise, and talk about politics, and talk about like their personal problems, and etc. That is like it's like a very general purpose kind of thing.
Yeah.
And that feels much more exciting.
Yeah.
That feels like it has potential.
Yeah. So
that feels like a logos that's like very low on blind spots. And like the machine learning, like just because you are good at talking in like one domain does not mean that you don't have like blind spots to lots of other domains.
Sure. Yeah, and maybe the sentence that comes up, or like the connection that I'm making, is that maybe like good logos, or like the good version of logos, it's not really like goal oriented. It's not like I'm gonna learn logos so I can build AI, but it's more like I'm going to like develop logos skill or like quality so that I can. I wonder, how would you finish that? Like the more general one. Like is it just to be more in touch with reality or something, or
I don't think I really have an answer to that. I like the goal oriented thing actually doesn't seem that bad to me, but it should be like a goal that's like a whole goal. Like I don't know, that it, like where the goal has like a sort of right relationship with the person. Whereas like I want to build AI, I think is like in some sense like a very partial goal. It's like there's like a bunch of like, for example, it's not thinking about the consequences and like I want to do this thing. Am I going to be happy with the outcomes? Like, am I engaging with like whether I'm going to be happy with the outcomes? Like, I think often not. Yeah, and so that feels like sort of partial in that sense.
Yeah.
Whereas if you're like I want logos because like, well, like I want to develop in my life, and I like right now I like want to like make professional progress. Like I want to like gain more skills by like getting the right sort of job and stuff. Like that seems like it could potentially, it feels like more integrated with the person.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. I guess the thought I'm left with is, can logos also become a weapon?
I'm not super sure.
Yeah. Maybe that's a separate conversation.
Yeah, I mean, I think, like in some sense, like science has been, science is like a facet of logos. It seems, or I don't know, it seems useful to think about it that way. And it seems like science was like kind of a weapon, or at least a very pointy thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm also just thinking about like manipulation and people who can craft speech in a way that makes other people follow or get like really resonant, very activated. And that's what I've been. That's what I was connecting the like weapon with. But I guess there's like a. It seems like there's like an underlying difference in like intention. Like I think someone could. It's like logos is logos, but if the intention underneath is like aimed at destruction, then it actually can be a weapon. But if the intention behind it is focused on like expansion and more truth, or more dialogue, like more connection, that seems basically good.
Yeah, I guess so. That frames it as like logos is just like neutral. It's just logos is like a sword,
right?
And I think I'm not sure if that's true. I think I like have more hope in logos than like just the like it's a tool.
Yeah.
I think maybe I wouldn't be interested in it if it were just a tool.
Yeah. Maybe if it feels like a tool, it's not actually logos or something.
Yeah, maybe. Like part of logos feels like, or like the ideal part of it. I think it has something to do with like being open to the way that like words will change you. And like sort of being changed by like you're going to engage with something and like notice the resonances that are there, and then like you are open to being changed by them, and that means like being open to some resonances that were not what you expected and like turn you in a different direction and like change your priorities and stuff.
Yeah, I like that, because I guess that includes some sort of not just using words to achieve your goals, but also being humbled by words.
Yeah, words as like a way like of interacting with the world, and which includes the world interacting back at you.
Yeah. Well,
cool.
In fact, that's a beautiful thing to end on.
Yeah. Great stopping point.
Yeah. I want to maybe end with something that happened in my last conversation. Was what we ended with a little bit of gratitude, and maybe I wanted to express some gratitude for you being open to experiment with me, and specifically for introducing silences into this conversation. I think that helped a lot. Yeah. So thank you.
I am grateful for you inviting me here, and for bringing your real self and like telling me like that you're bored, and that things didn't resonate at various points. Yeah, I think that got us like back on track. That was quite good.
Cool.